Hello and welcome to Lexitecture, a podcast about word origins and histories. My name is Ryan, and in each episode my friend Amy and I bring a new pair of words to share their stories with each other and you. You can find our past episodes and the occasional blog post on our website at lexitecture.com. Follow along with us on Twitter and Facebook at Lexitecture, and if you really like what we do, you can support the show at patreon.com/lexitecture.
Today's episode, Lieutenant Beer.
Okay, do you want to go first? Want to go first?
I can go first.
Okay, cool.
So my word today is lieutenant.
Interesting.
Otherwise known for people on a certain side of the Atlantic as lieutenant.
Yeah.
And also people in Canada who swing sort of that way linguistically. We've had this discussion about how Canadian English is sort of like
a little bit Commonwealthy.
I don't know, we're kind of like our divorced parents are British and American English, and so because we spend half the time at mom's and half the time at dad's, we just have a bit of both.
Here is a thing that I discovered in the last couple of, well, basically since I talked to you last, I discovered that Canadian dollar coins are called loonies.
Yes.
And I was not aware of this. And I was reading about the Olympics, because obviously they're going on just now. And I was reading about the tradition of the lucky loonie, which apparently is a thing that Canadian athletes do, which is quite cool. And of course, being the sort of brain that I have, I thought, why is it called a loonie? So I looked it up and discovered that it's called a loonie because there's a loon on the coin, which, makes perfect sense. I've just realised a very annoying
We're nothing
thing, Ryan,
if not creative.
I've just altered my mic setting. So probably the first part was dramatically loud, and this bit from now on will be a bit less loud. That's annoying, isn't it?
Okay. Well, we can deal with it. Thank
you, that was the right answer.
Yeah, loons. Yeah, the loony is, and then in our boundless and unfathomable creativity, when Canada switched over to having a $2 coin, as opposed to a $2 bill, it's got a polar bear on the back of it. We called it the toonie because we don't have ideas.
I think that's kind of, language is always about the easy option. Let's face it. Usage and
generally.
Which things stick and which things don't. It's always about the easy way. So I wasn't too disturbed by the toonie. But the loony was interesting to me. But when I looked it up, it showed a picture of, obviously, the loon and the other side of the coin. And I was like, the British Queen is on Canadian currency. I had no idea.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I know, like, logically, Canada is still a Commonwealth country. I don't really know.
Is.
Yeah.
Is still.
So the whole divorced parents thing really does kind of ring true when you look at your money.
Yeah. Technically she's the Queen of Canada when she's on our money, because the crown is still the head of state and whatnot.
Yeah, which means things that, people
know
about.
Yeah.
Definite things.
It involves several layers of ceremonial positions at the peak of the power pyramid.
Yeah.
But other than that, it just means that there is a particular lady on the back of most of our money.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, all the coins and a couple of the bills.
Also, I don't know about you, like this has very much been my post-pandemic experience, but I haven't seen real money in months.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like we've just stopped using it, really.
Getting fewer and further between.
Yeah. Anyway, lieutenant.
Right, yeah, so lieutenant. So for anyone who's like, wait, I know that word, it's a military rank, usually, so generally among the various armies and military services that I looked at, one of the lower ones, if not the lowest.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
I mean, so lowest among the commissioned officers,
Right.
is how it should be put. So there are many ranks that are outranked by lieutenant, but lieutenant is the generally the lowest of the upper snooty echelon of various forces. So the British and U.S. armies, the U.S. Air Force and Marine Corps, Canadian Army, and the RCAF. Second lieutenant is the lowest, followed by first lieutenant, or just lieutenant for British and Canadian arrangements. And there's other arrangements and variations of the rank of lieutenant. Sometimes it's like a sub-lieutenant or whatever. Star Trek mirrors the U.S. naval ranking system.
Obviously.
So, for obviously, yeah. The Federation is the U.S. Navy, but in space. Yeah.
I gathered that was the case, yes.
Yeah. So, the earliest citation in the OED is from 1387, but it is not in the context of a military usage.
Okay.
So the earliest use, the sentence, is a work that says, "The Archbishop of Canterbury was lieutenant to the Pope and of the King of England." And so it's at first blush, it looks like it's using what I think many people assume is like a subsequent usage to the military term. Okay. So someone, you might hear in the movie, "Oh, that's my lieutenant went over to there," or, I mean, it's a bit on the formal side, but sometimes you'll hear that just meaning like someone's like representative or stand-in.
Dude, yeah.
Yeah. And that sort of, and I probably, I hadn't given it much thought, but I think I certainly would have thought, if someone had asked me, I would have said, "Oh, well, it's probably because, someone would send a lieutenant in the military context to do something that the higher ranking dude didn't want to do." And that's where we get that sort of analogous uses. But
no.
Usage. But the earliest, 1387, and it's that stand-in. And it's because the word lieutenant is literally just a smashing together of two French words. So
I always sort of assumed it was basically French, and that the whole lieutenant-lieutenant thing was probably down to that uniquely British absolute mangling of French words that it always kind of feels to me a bit like when terrible people go, "Oh, I can't possibly pronounce that name, I'll call you Bob." That there's that sort of there's that sort of vibe for me about a lot of the Anglicization of French words. "Oh no, we can't deal with this foreign muck. We'll make it this word." Maybe I'm being unfair there, but it's because if you look, if you consider the "lou" part as a French word, then undoubtedly, even if your French accent is as bad as mine is, and Scottish people don't have good French accents. I mean, generally speaking, I'm sure there are Scots with excellent French accents, but I am certainly not one of those people. Yeah. But even, even accounting for our weird vowels, "lou" is pronounced "lou." It's not pronounced "left."
Yeah.
So, tell me more.
Yeah, so, it's weird. So anyway, lieu, Lieu, means place.
Okay.
And so it's the exact same word as when you say something is in lieu of something else.
Perfect, yeah.
As in place of. And ultimately, lieu comes from the Latin locus, or place.
Oh, okay.
Which is where we get location and other, locale, all those other related words. Mm-hmm. Locus in the Latin is ultimately of unknown origin. Couldn't get anywhere with finding any interesting stories about that. So we'll leave it. So, lieu is place and
locus
tenant.
este in estimabile est. This is a throwback from my days as a church musician, organist, choir trainer. It is an anthem by I've forgotten who, and it's very beautiful place, a very beautiful piece of music. But I love the fact that I was never quite sure if it was a butchering of Latin or just a really beautiful, easy to to translate piece of Latin, but locus iste inestimabile est means this place is inestimable.
Right.
So I always liked the fact that it was like, easy Latin. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's where that comes from. So the tenant part would be, in French, would be tenant, and it means holding or to hold.
Oh.
So literally a placeholder, and tenant comes from the PIE root ten, meaning to stretch. And this is the one that gives us...
Tendon.
Yep.
Amazing.
Tendon, tenuous, and then other things that have sort of a grab or a grasp. So obtain or abstain. The words that end in ten, so pretend, contend, extend, attend, all those ones. Obtain.
They're all about stretching things.
Hypotenuse. A hypotenuse is the stretchy one. So that's where the tenant comes from. So just literally holding the place of. As far as the Lou Lef pronunciation things goes, literally anyone's guess is as good as anyone else's, because
Sure.
Nobody is remotely sure. So there's often a suggestion that it comes from the blending of, or the confusion between the U and the V in writing, because for the longest time they were just interchangeable.
That makes
and
sense.
it was contextual, whether it was pronounced as a V or a U. And so that was one of the theories that gets thrown around, is that at some point someone saw the word written, mistook the U for a V, and ran with it.
That's obviously a system that worked really well, that whole just use context to figure it out. Except where quite obviously you can't figure it out from context. Let's maybe have another letter.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, but there's other people and places that suggest that's bonkers and doesn't make sense for a lot of linguistic reasons that are above my pay grade. So yeah, ultimately it's just one of those, I don't know, they just do it differently over there.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that's true no matter which side of the ocean you're on, because they do it differently over there. But yeah, so a lieutenant is just a placeholder. So that's like lieutenant commander is the person that stands in place of the commander, lieutenant general, that kind of thing.
I mean, it's quite a demeaning etymology for the people with the rank.
It is.
Yeah, like you're not actually the guy, but I suppose you'll do. Until the guy
I feel like
isn't too busy or comes along or whatever.
Yeah. It is on the demeaning side. I have this sensation that perhaps the military is not known for going out of its way to avoid demeaning people of lower rank. That
is possibly a fair point to raise. But it reminds me of, it's making me think of the Oscars. You know how you get people at the Oscars whose job is literally to sit in the seats of the famous, so that if they need to go to the bathroom or take a phone call or they just get fed up of the 5-hour ceremony, they just bring in a beautiful to replace the famous, so that there aren't any empty seats, and the famouses are much too important to do things like sit down and pay attention. So, yeah. Yeah,
so each of those people is literally, that was literally Tom Cruise's lieutenant there.
Yeah.
And
I've taken recently, I don't know why, I'm very much enjoying this in my own sort of the privacy of my own head, but referring to the famouses and the olds and the youngs, and just mashing adjectives as much as possible. For some reason, this is a thing I've taken to doing, and I like it.
Well, verbing nouns and vice versa is fun, so why not nouning adjectives?
Yeah. I should draw attention. This doesn't in any way relate to lieutenants. It's funny because as a person who learned a lot more words from books than I think I've ever done from oral usage, and that leads to the whole, how do you actually pronounce this word? There should be a helpline kind of thing. And so reading the word lieutenant, I figured it was pronounced lieutenant because, of the letters and such like, and because phonics. And then I sort of, got a bit older and wiser. Probably said it wrongly somewhere and somebody mocked me. And so I remembered that in Britain, we say lieutenant.
Right.
And kind of, I have a vague recollection of thinking, all right, okay, we do that. Because, there's lots of words in British English that are like that. Like, I recently discovered there's a brand of cordial that I like from time to time to buy. The brand is spelled Belvoir. How would you pronounce that?
Belvoir?
Yeah.
Belvoir?
This is how I pronounced the name of the cordial until my mum, one of those I did it wrong and they mocked me people, said, that's not how you say that word. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Quite clearly, they are the letters. Now, this is actually what is known between me and my mother as a key situation, because when I was quite a little girl, but learning to read and liked reading sort of, slightly pretentious things, because that's who I am as a human. I had a little book of poems. And one of the poems in it was Cargoes by John Masefield. Do you know this poem?
No.
It's beautiful. It starts off with the wonderful, wonderful line, Quinquereme of Nineveh to distant Ophir, rowing into haven in sunny Palestine. And it's basically just a description of the cargoes of different ships. And
okay.
Hang on. Oh, I thought I would be able to find it and tell you it. Here it is. Quinquereme of Nineveh from distant Ophir, rowing home to haven in sunny Palestine, with a cargo of ivory and apes and peacocks, sandalwood, cedarwood, and sweet white wine. Stately Spanish galleon coming from the isthmus, dipping through the tropics in the mad march... Oh, sorry. Two things have happened. Number one, I'm trying to read and talk at the same time, and my brain is scrambling. And the other thing I've just realised is I'm reading this poem to give you an example of a word that is not in this poem. It must have been in another poem that was in the same book. Here's the rest of the poem, just because it's beautiful. Stately Spanish galleon coming from the isthmus, dipping through the tropics by the palm green shores, with a cargo of diamonds, emeralds, amethysts, topazes, cinnamon and gold moidores. Dirty British coaster with a salt-caked smokestack, butting through the channel in the mad March days, with a cargo of tine coal, road rails, pig lead, firewood, ironware and cheap tin trays. And it was one of these poems where I like a lot of poetry, I genuinely didn't understand about 2/3 of the words I was reading, but I loved the words.
Right, yeah.
I didn't know what a quinquereme was, with all its terrible slavey connotations, but isn't it just a beautiful word to say? Quinquereme.
It is.
But there was a poem in that same anthology that included the word key, spelled Quay.
Oh, okay.
And I read this poem to my mum and she said, it's key. And I said, what? She said, that word, it isn't quay, it's key. And I said, well, it says quay here.
Yeah, that's right.
Because indeed it did. But
it does, yeah.
So the Belvoir cordial, apparently it's pronounced beaver.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. In the same way that the British surnames, like the one that is written Cholmondeley is pronounced Chumley. Belvoir is apparently pronounced beaver.
Well, and how, like, the place names, Worcester and Gloucester and, you know.
Oh,
you do have a habit.
The very, very favourite Scottish place name conundrum given to tourists is, so I'll spell this one for you.
Okay.
MILNGAVIE.
Nilngavie.
Yeah, M for mother at the start.
Oh, okay. Milngavie?
That's what it looks like. It's pronounced Mulgai.
Oh, jeez.
Why is it pronounced Mulgai? It just is.
It just is.
Yeah. There's a lovely little fishing town in the East Neuk of Fife, not very far from where I live. It's again, the name of the town is Anstruther. That's how it's written, that's how it's pronounced.
Okay.
But the locals all call it Ainster. And so,
Wow.
like, the first time I heard someone talking about Ainster, I thought it was a whole other place. Someone pointed out to me that, no, it's that same place that you thought you knew the name of. You just didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, British place names are just bananas. Like the castle in town where they've got the largest secondhand bookshop, and it's where they filmed Harry Potter, and like Alnwick or
Yes.
Annick for some reason.
Yeah. Annick, indeed. But
It's like, oh, we're taking a tour. We're going down to Alnwick. Someone's like, no, idiot.
No, you are not. yeah,
No,
for sure.
you are certainly
but
not
lieutenant
doing that.
was one of these words for me because I read it as lieutenant, and then I was told that it was lieutenant, and did that whole, oh, how silly of me. I am very poorly educated, stupid and wrong, and I should remember in the future never to make a mistake ever again because I will be judged imperfect. And
Right.
but it's I've got to do that sort of mental correction before I open my mouth every single time to remember to say lieutenant. And
Well,
it
you'll be
really
right at home
annoys
here
me.
if you ever come this side of the pond.
Yeah. But then I also sort of feel like perversely, if I was that side of the pond, I'd probably find myself saying lieutenant, and in that same annoying way that when you move to a country where they drive on the opposite side of the road to what you're used to, you look the wrong way when the traffic is coming. And then when you come home again, you continue to look the wrong fucking way, which is definitely not an experience that I very much had in the
definitely
early
not.
2000s. Yeah.
Yeah, no, of course not. The lieutenant thing makes me think of, you know, that meme where it's like a 4-panel comic and it's the people in like a business meeting in an office tower, and there's a guy doing a presentation, and then somebody raises his hand, and then there's like a panel where the presenter just looks angry, and the last panel is the guy being hurled out of the window, and people put in the different things, and I'm picturing frame 1 is like pointing to the word and saying lieutenant, and the person going, that's dumb, there's no F in it, and then being hurled out the window. And that's how the British got lieutenant as a pronunciation.
Yeah, I think what you've just described pretty much sums up British English. There's been a very interesting Twitter discussion over the last week or so. A guy called Digby Lord Jones, or as he is often referred to in the media, Lord Digby Jones. I don't know. I don't know if Digby is a particularly common name in Canada.
I don't think so.
It's not here, unless you're incredibly rich, posh, and privileged. Generally speaking,
Right.
of course, you know, obviously that is a generalisation, and I'm sure there are many Digbys who are egalitarian, pleasant, and non-terrible. But this guy doesn't appear to be one of those Digbys. Anyway, he's I hesitate to call him a politician because politicians are supposed to actually know things about people. Anyway,
Right.
So there is Digby Lord Jones tweeted about a black female sports pundit, commentator, presenter who has recently been appointed.
Oh, this could only end well.
Yeah, she's recently been appointed to the helm of a programme called Football Focus, which is kind of the BBC's sort of main coverage of football, of soccer. And, you know, it's great that she's female because football commentary and punditry and analysis has been historically pretty thin on jobs for women. And she's also, she's a woman of colour, which again is great, good representation. She's also really, really good at her job. A former footballer, you know, she's also from a very working class background. Tower Hamlets, South London. She's got an accent that reflects that background. And
right.
so Digby Lord Jones, I can't, but it was something along the lines of, I just can't take it anymore. She's ruining an otherwise good job with her ridiculous pronunciation. Won't someone send her to elocution lessons? We are not watching weightlifting and sailing at the Olympics. There's a G on the end, kind of thing.
Oh, jeez.
So,
okay, so this is where this,
Yeah, this is where this is going. So Alex Jones, to her credit, replied to say, who I am is who I am, and the way that I talk is part of that. And I am a woman who is very proud of her achievements. And essentially that was an incredibly classy, restrained, good way to respond, as far as I'm concerned, you know. And of course, the rest of the internet, quite a lot of celebrities and sports people and all this kind of thing. A lot of people said, "Dude, fuck off," you know, which, as far as I'm concerned, was entirely the right response. Quite a few people pointed out that, strangely enough, he hasn't ever had anything to say about white male presenters. That I think is an interesting point to be made about that particular intervention. That he felt he really, really needed to say something about a phenomenon that is incredibly common in British English. And also there was a little bit of a, the sort of debate over what constitutes a correct accent, which is, of course, a fucking stupid one. And very, very quickly, people were pointing out that the fact that the reason that received pronunciation, so-called Queen's English, is considered by people like this twat to be the correct way to talk is because, historically, these are the people who have had power, money, and influence. That doesn't mean that
I wonder if I can guess what the people most loudly on his side look like. Yeah, I bet I can.
I bet you can too. So because Language had some interesting tweets about this, about the story, and about the notion of just that notion of language as an indicator of class, language as an indicator of culture, and just so many of these things that are just stupid. I mean, opinions are all the speaker's own, but yeah, and I for one love the fact that the BBC is a particularly good indicator of the fact that things are not quite as terrible as they once were. Now, the BBC as an institution is far from perfect, but when I was a kid, people with regional accents weren't on the BBC. And I don't know about you, but one of the things I like most about British English is the vast, dizzying array of regional accents. I think it makes our country interesting, and I think it makes our language interesting, because the notion of British English is in itself a pretty crazy one, because I don't talk the same way that people 40 miles away from me talk. and even within the city that I live, there are people with quote-unquote Dundonian accents who wouldn't recognise the way I talk as being a Dundonian accent. So, and I haven't even gotten to another city yet. so the idea
fact that there are multiple different languages for neighbourhoods, like neighbourhoods in London have their own accents, is crazy to me.
And London's a big city, but also it's a hugely diverse city, and that's one of the things that makes it, in my opinion, a really super cool city. It's the same as most capital cities, lots of people, lots of different people, lots of different things to experience, lots of different ways of saying things. That's what makes cities interesting, as far as I can see. I thought it was an interesting thing to point out. Also, Stephen Fry's response to this whole affair. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to look it up because I don't want to. I don't want to.
I'm very excited about this.
Mash him.
I saw some of the fallout and sort of peripheral stuff around this dropping of G's thing, but I didn't know what the original. I missed kind of the original thing. But
The Lord
Stuff like this,
Lord
I can't help
Digby
but think.
Jones. Sorry, on you go.
Okay, yeah.
Oh no. So Lord
No,
Digby
I want to hear
Jones,
Stephen Fry first.
as he refers to himself on Twitter, tweeted, "Enough! I can't stand it anymore. Alex Scott spoils..." I think I said Alex Jones, who's another presenter. Sorry. Alex Scott spoils a good presentational job on the BBC Olympics team with her very noticeable inability to pronounce her G's at the end of a word. Competitors are not taking part, Alex, in the fencing, rowing, boxing, kayaking, weightlifting and swimming. Stephen Fry. You are everything linguists and true lovers of language despise. Also, since we're being picky, you are not Lord Digby Jones, you are Digby, Lord Jones. There's a world of difference. But however you're titled, you disgrace the upper house with your misplaced snobbery.
Nice.
And that, as far as I was concerned, was the end of that.
Yeah. But imagine getting to the point where you even think something along the lines of, enough, I can't stand it anymore.
Yeah, this
and
is
the
just
thing that
wrong.
has got you to that point. Yeah, and the thing that got you to that point, of all the things happening in the world right now,
Sure.
is that someone pronounced it fencing instead of fencing. And that's what drove you over the edge. Like, that was, it's just, if that's your Michael Douglas in Falling Down moment, you need help.
Something's gone badly wrong before that.
Yes. There are other things going on in your life.
The supreme irony of this is that there is I wasn't aware of this cliche until this week and until these discussions, but the kind of cliche of the upper, the British upper classes, is that they go hunting, fishing, and shooting. Not a G in evidence, and apparently this was both a description of activities that were not generally taken on by lower class people, or certainly not in the same way as the upper class people did, and also the way that those people spoke. So, shove your G's up your arse, Digby Lord Jones, and let Alex Scott get on with doing a wonderful job. I'm annoyed now by Alex Scott and Alex Jones. Alex Jones she's another good example. She's a presenter on the BBC on a sort of a tea time light entertainment programme, but she has a delicious Welsh accent.
Okay, nice. I was slightly concerned that it was a different Alex Jones that you had confused her with, but in context, that wouldn't make any sense.
Who's the
unless
other
you're not
Alex
familiar
Jones?
with Alex Jones. Alex, you do live
Alex
a charmed
Jones,
life.
the crazy right wing guy.
Yeah, the insane dude.
I don't like to devote any of my brain time to remembering that he exists if I really don't have to.
Yeah, Alex, pronouns and help for the poor are turning the frogs gay, Jones. That guy.
Ooh, who knew?
He's the worst. But anyway, you weren't talking about him at all.
I'm pretty sure that I'm pretty sure that Jurassic Park taught us all in like 1992 that frogs were pretty gay anyway, or at least frog DNA was. Life finds a way and all
right
that.
down to their DNA.
Anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like how you brought it back to Jeff Goldblum, as all things should when they want to end on a high note.
It's a bit of a mystery to me, Ryan, as to why it's taken me so long to investigate the etymology of this word. And I did, of course, as you know, we've talked about before, I immediately thought, one of us must have talked about this word already. It must be there on the website.
Right.
And of course, it's not. And the word is beer.
Oh, yeah, that is weird.
How on earth? Given our relationship and how we got to be friends, it's just crazy that we've never ever discussed
it doesn't make
the
any
word
sense.
beer. So, beer is... I said to my husband yesterday, I think I'm going to talk about beer tomorrow on Lexitecture, and he was like, why is that an interesting word to look at? Beer means beer. German, beer. That's it. That's all there is to it. Which I think sort of beautifully illustrates the difference between me and my husband. But also, he makes a good point. It is, very obviously, I think, a Germanic word. So the OED says that
Yeah.
it's Common West Germanic, that we get Old English Beor, B-E-O-R, which is Old High German Bior, B-I-O-R. There are lots and lots of Germanic variants in terms of spelling and probably pronunciation, but again, you know, that's really not my area of expertise. So the OED says this: the Germanic form might be buro, buwo meant barley, and Kogel, taking the same derivation, has suggested as the Gothic form bigwis, buwis.
Ooh.
And Sievers points out that one of the other forms of the neuter suffix os, s, vis, would better account for the West Germanic forms. It is ultimately a word of uncertain origin. Hooray, we like those.
Nice.
But I can tell you what I found out. I can't give you any kind of definitives. The OED states that its origin is a word inherited from Germanic. That makes good sense. If you think Germany, you think beer. And I hope if you think beer, you think Germany. Because frankly, if you're drinking beer without having tried German beer, you are missing out.
Yes.
Beer is old. So the first citation in the OED of the word beer is from circa 1000. It's from the West Saxon Gospels. He drinkt win ne beer. As in, he doesn't drink wine or beer. Which sounds to me, you know, if that's your choice, I support you. But also, a life without wine or beer. Anyway, as I say, each to their own.
Not for me.
Certainly not my own. And I quite love the definition that's given by the OED, because it says, an alcoholic liquor obtained by the fermentation of malt or other saccharine substance, flavoured with hops or other aromatic bitters. Formerly distinguished from ale by being hopped, but now the generic name of malt liquor, including ale and porter, although sometimes restricted and used in contradistinction to ale. The word occurs in Old English, but its use is rare, except in poetry, and it seems to have become common only in the 16th century as the name of hopped malt liquor. And then it says, not in Chaucer or Piers Plowman. And I thought it was quite interesting that they point out where it isn't. But I mean, it makes good sense when you're the OED to see Chaucer and Piers Plowman as, you know, really, really good definitive sources. It was interesting to me that the word ale might have been what beer drinkers called beer rather than beer, and particularly interesting to see that beer was a kind of a poetic word. So
yeah, that's neat.
Yeah, it seems a bit strange. So I had a little look at ale also, and discovered that, again, the origin is given as a word inherited from Germanic, and it's cognate with Middle Dutch ale, a kind of beer containing a smaller amount of hops than usual and hence sweeter in taste. Old Saxon, Early Runic, Old Icelandic, Old Sweet, you know, all of these places. We get Old Prussian, alu means mead, which is a fermented honey drink.
Ooh.
Old Church Slavonic, yay, gives us olu, which is an isolated attestation in a 13th century manuscript glossing a Hellenistic Greek sikira, meaning fermented liquor or an intoxicating beverage. And it's believed that the sikira Greek gives us cider. But you know, so ale seems like a pretty established Germanic word. And I looked a little bit further into ale and discovered that there is a Proto-Indo-European root that gives us the word ale.
Oh.
And its meaning is ale.
Ale.
That's how old beer is.
It's that theory that beer is actually the foundation of human civilization because it was out of a drive to have the stuff to make beer that people eventually just decided that farming should be a thing. It's like all of agriculture and all of the subsequent sort of steps in the development of civilization, quote unquote, comes from just, we need to find a steady supply of this stuff.
We love this
and
stuff.
So let's
How do we get more?
Let's just invent the concept of cities and countries and nations and empires and states and organized society.
Oh, Oh,
and it's
here we are.
all
right.
because of beer. Yeah.
I quite love that. I'm certainly not going to argue with that general way to go. So ale comes from ale, the Pi root meaning ale, and none of this is etymologically interesting, other than the fact that beer is as old as words. The etymology of the word beer itself, it is uncertain. Etymon line describes it as a West Germanic word of much disputed and ambiguous origin. I get that.
Ooh.
I feel like something that's so important and so well loved and so universally loved, people are going to want to be the people who gave that its name. And I feel like that is something that contributes to disputed and ambiguous origins. No, we called it this thing. No, we called it that
right,
thing.
yeah.
We were first. No, we were first. That as soon as there's a dispute going on, those are the sorts of kind of basis for dispute that pop into my head. Maybe that's just me. So Etymon line says it's probably a 6th century West Germanic monastic borrowing of vulgar Latin biber, which means a drink or a beverage. This comes from the Latin infinitive bibere, to drink, which comes from the Pi root po or poi, which means to drink. The Latin infinitive bibere gives me one of my most favourite pretentious words, because if a person is bibulous, then they... You can either take bibulous to mean they drink a lot, but you can also use bibulous to mean that a person is drunk. So they are a drinker or a drunkard, or they are drunk. And I don't know about you, but I love drinking strong imported European lager and then announcing to the world that I am bibulous. So, yeah.
But also that you also like books, so you would then become a bibulous bibliophile.
Oh, I like it, Ryan. I like it a lot.
So good.
So Etymon line discusses this idea that's put forward in the OED that perhaps it comes from the Proto-Germanic word for barley, and it also mentions this sort of slight overlap with the word ale. The Spanish cerveza comes from Latin, which means cervezia, which means beer. So it's interesting to me that there is a Latin word meaning beer, but that didn't give us the English word. Obviously, Latin and Germanic words, there's a certain amount of crossover, but you often get words that come into English directly from Germanic sources without really touching Latin much. So interesting to see that cerveza is a Latin etymology. Old Church Slavonic, because we are Old Church Slavonic, gives us pivo, which is the source of the general Slavic word for beer. So if your strong imported European lager involves Czech beer, which it should, frankly.
It should, yeah.
Excuse me. Some of my most favourite strong imported European lagers are Czech. And pivo, which I believe, in Czech and maybe even Hungarian, the weirdest of all the Slavic languages, in that area of the world, if you're looking for pivo, people will generally understand what you mean. Of course, my pronunciation of Slavic words is literally made up in my head. So apologies if you're a person who actually knows how to pronounce pivo and its many variants in that part of the world where the beer is so very excellent. Anyway, so beer comes from Pi root, meaning to drink. And that root gives us words like beer, beverage, bib, bibulous, imbibe, all of these imbrew.
Right.
Penocytosis, which is an interesting one. It's about liquid moving into cells. I suppose you could think of it as a cell drinking. It also gives us pierogi, the dumplings.
Oh, interesting.
And poison. It gives us potable, as in able to be drunk, potation.
Right.
Also potion. And I've deliberately left till last my two favourite cognates. The first is hibachi.
Oh.
Tell me what that word means, Ryan.
Is it hibachi? I know it. I know that I know it, and as soon as you say it, I'm going to go, oh yeah, that.
Well, the interesting thing about the word hibachi is that, particularly in the Northern American places, people think they know what it means. And I found a very lovely article which is titled hibachi probably doesn't mean what you think it does.
Okay.
So usually in North America, a hibachi restaurant or a hibachi grill is a restaurant where you go and either the meat, the food is cooked in front of you on a kind of a metal griddle, or perhaps where you cook your own food on a metal barbecue, or even a charcoal barbecue, you know, one of these sorts of things. And that's not actually in any way accurate. So the article, which is written by an Australian woman who lived in Japan for 10 years or so, hibachi literally means fire bowl. And it's the bowl part that comes from this pie root. A bowl, a cup, a vessel, something along those lines. And the hibachi fire bowl was a pot or a box filled with charcoal and ash put into the corner of a room or put into the centre of a room for heating purposes. So it was literally the bowl where you put the fire. And this immediately reminded me of the wonderful Korean barbecue restaurants where someone with very thick gloves would come and deposit a bowl of red hot charcoal into the table in front of you, and whose job was creating bowls of red hot charcoal, which always looked.
You
like
didn't
really,
say
really
a single
fun.
word. Actually, you didn't say a single word directly related to food in that description.
Your mouth is watering.
And I've never been made more instantly hungry by someone saying things that didn't include any reference actually to food. But there are days when I will like wake up or find myself wandering around and just I would start an international incident happily to be able to sit down at one of those restaurants again.
Yeah, so great. And, you know, these days, even Scotland has Korean restaurants these days, but they don't have the flaming charcoal, crazy health and safety ignoring situation that was just so brilliant. The very best kind of a barbecue restaurant included the flaming charcoal. Yeah, so from a fire bowl in the corner of the room, in the centre of the room, hibachi then became... There are examples of hibachi tables where the hot part is built into the table and you kind of sit around there and drink warm tea and all that sort of thing. And eventually it has... Eventually it came to involve food. But if you're at one of those delightful restaurants where somebody just slaps meat onto that hot sizzling thing and then deliciousness happens, then you are in fact at a teppanyaki, where they are using a teppan, which is a flat iron griddle. So the food is often referred to as teppanyaki, but yeah, it's a teppan if it's that kind of grill. It's not hibachi at all, despite what many restaurants will say. So I thought that cognate was quite interesting. However, the one that I think I like best is symposium. Now, a symposium is, as far as I'm concerned, it's usually a gathering of academics, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now,
yeah, I think so.
How naive of me, based on the academics that I know, in fact, based on pretty much every academic I've ever known, how naive of me not to realise that this word has a direct etymological connection with booze. You know?
Just a straight line.
It's just, I can't believe it's never occurred to me until now. However, it very, very simply does. The sim prefix at the start of the word, sym in the word, but often syn, as in synergy or synthesis, that sort of thing, means together. And the pos, not piece of shit in this case, the pose part of the word, poses a drinking from a stem of Aeolic ponen, which means to drink, which of course comes from the pie root, po or poi, to drink. So while it seems as though they're discussing dry academic treatises and thought and philosophies and science and all of these lofty, important, world-changing thoughts and ideas of scholarship, what they are in fact doing is they are getting together to drink. Quite simply.
I feel like the first
so much
people
sense.
who... And it makes sense that it was academics. Like, if you're trying to think of a way to sort of validate or otherwise authenticate what you fully intend to be just several days elsewhere with your buddies, having a whole bunch of booze. If you're an academic, you would come up with something like, "Oh, I'm not just going and becoming off my rocker with all of my fellow professors. I'm going to a symposium."
Yeah, exactly. So the sense of a meeting on a subject is from 1784. So it took them a while to figure this out. But yeah, hilarious. So a symposium
That's awesome.
is a party, a drinking party, a getting together with booze. Incidentally,
and it often is, of course.
Of course. It strikes me, I have accidentally answered a question that I didn't know was a question, but I'm going to assume that the West Germanic booza, the word for barley, is probably etymologically related to the word booze.
Oh, that's interesting.
I didn't actually notice while I was researching, but having said the word booze, I'm thinking that surely makes sense.
Yeah.
So it turns out that
Surely
beer
makes sense.
it's not just awesome and delicious and perhaps the secret of why we stopped being apes in caves. It's also etymologically pretty interesting. Or I thought so anyway.
That's fantastic.
I'll drink to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so a couple of my thoughts that I've sort of been banking. One, anyone else who, as soon as Amy said potables, as one does if you're from a certain demographic, immediately thought of Will Ferrell's Alex Trebek and the Celebrity Jeopardy category, Potent Potables. I see you. I am you. We can be friends.
Do you know, I'm a little bit disappointed in myself because when I was looking at the list of cognates, I thought, oh, Potent Potables. And I completely forgot that it was from Celebrity Jeopardy. Now that you say it, I'm like, of course. Damn you, Trebek. But potables.
That's fantastic.
It's a lovely word, isn't it? Potable. Potable liquor.
Potable is it's a great word.
And that's it for another episode of Lexitecture. To get in touch with us about something you heard in this episode, you can email us at words@lexitecture.com. You can also follow along and talk to us at Lexitecture on Facebook and Twitter, and at Lexitecture Podcast on Instagram. For back episodes and the occasional blog post, visit us at Lexitecture.com. Thanks very much, and we'll talk to you again soon.